welcome back to another vlog. This is Steven Universe, Season 5, Episodes 25 through 28, Legs from Here to Homeworld, Familiar, Together Alone, and Escapism. So I'm going to run through these in a slightly weird order because I want to talk about Familiar last, but I'm otherwise going to talk about the episodes in order. So I'm going to start with Legs from Here to Homeworld, which is kind of the least of these episodes, by which I mean it's not that lots of interesting stuff doesn't happen in it, but it's kind of overshadowed by the later episodes. So, Legs from Here to Homeworld picks up pretty much the minute Reunited stops, with Yellow and Blue dealing with the realization that Steven is Pink Diamond. Or at least that his gem is Pink Diamond's gem, because the question of, is Steven Pink Diamond, kind of hangs over all these episodes, waiting to be resolved in Change Your Mind, which at this point I have watched. I'm not including it in this vlog because 4 episodes is plenty for one vlog. 8 is kind of ridiculous, especially when this much happens in them, and frankly, Change Your Mind deserves its own episode. Its own vlog. Because I got a lot to say when we get to that one. But the main thing Legs from Here to Homeworld is doing is setting up the rest. It's setting up that Blue, Yellow, and the Crystal Gems now have a shared goal, which is healing the corrupted gems. We find out that the intent of the Diamond's attack was to destroy all the gems on Earth, not corrupt them, and they are honestly freaked out by the corruption. So the goal is to heal them. Unfortunately, the 3 of them together can heal 1 gem temporarily, as long as they maintain their focus and attention on it, and touch. The minute one of them lets go, it reverts back to how it was, how she was. And of course it's Centipede, who is the first one that they try to heal, because of course it is. That's the corrupted gem that Steven is closest to. So there's some cute moments mixed in here. I particularly like Steven saying that his mom probably launched the ship much more gracefully, and Pearl's kind of wistful. No, not really. You know, it's a fond memory for her of how bad Pink was at launching the ship, and Steven is the same way. And that's a cute, sweet little moment. But really, the most important moment of the episode is the very ending, when we meet White Diamond. And there's a lot going on with White Diamond. She doesn't let Steven get a word in edgewise. She's immediately set up as this kind of overbearing mother figure who doesn't listen. Very similar in a much different scale to Connie's mom, but where Connie's mom needed to be brought around to listening, it's clear White Diamond is past that point. Connie's mom was overly strict and didn't listen to her daughter enough. White Diamond we will see is outright abusive. And in this scene, we get a sense of that. This sense of she has no interest in what Pink has to say and what Steven has to say, even in who they are. She lives entirely inside her own head, which is, of course, the visual that they keep repeating. They keep referencing it. White Diamond doesn't leave her own head anymore. And that's going to be very significant in Change Your Mind. I apologize for the sniffles, by the way. I am fighting a cold. It's been, like, sort of there for a couple weeks now, but never quite completely gotten its grip on me. So hopefully I can just fight it the rest of the way off and just not have a full-blown cold. But I've definitely got this bit of a sniffle, my voice is a little off and all that stuff, so I apologize for that. Unfortunately, it's getting to be the end of the month and I have to record this. So, excuse me. That's Legs from Here to Hold. Like I said, I'm skipping Familiar. I want to talk about that at the end. I'm going to talk instead next about Together Alone, which is, of course, the show's once again doing this thing where it mirrors a past episode, sort of like how the question mirrored the answer. Now, Together Alone is going to mirror Alone Together, which was the episode that introduced Stevani. It's also got, in terms of Connie comforting Steven by saying, "I'm here," a little bit of mindful education. But the whole thing in Alone Together, like kind of the pun of the title, was that Steven and Connie fused. They were alone together. They were in this fusion by themselves, just the two of them. But they were also, when they felt the focus of negative attention at the party, they were alone together. They were together, yet they still felt alone and isolated. And if I remember correctly, that's what caused them to defuse. Here, it's the opposite. Everyone is together in this great big ball. Everybody except White Diamond. But everybody there is alone. There's no actual engagement between people in this ball. Everyone comes up and ritually presents themselves to Steven, Pink, and then moves on. And then when it comes time to dance, they do it without even looking at each other. The cogwheels are just cogwheels in a machine. You know, it's all very mechanistic, very organized, but very rigid, and without any real interaction between individuals. The only exceptions we see are two green gems of different types that I don't know what either of them is. I don't have every gem type in this show memorized, I'm sorry. Particularly not ones that, to my knowledge, haven't been shown on screen before. But they clearly have a connection of some kind from the start. Because when Yellow Diamond enters, one of them is kind of overawed and the other elbows her. And then when Blue Diamond enters, the one that did the elbowing is crying, and the one that was overawed previously kind of rolls her eyes. Like, they're clearly connected and interacting with each other in a way that nobody else at the ball is. The other pairs that interact are Steve and Connie and Steve and Amethyst. And Steve and Pearl. But outside of Steven's interactions with a couple of his friends, that's the only other interaction that happens. And it's laying the groundwork for when Steven and Connie, feeling alone, Connie helps Steven remember that he's connected to her, and they fuse, horrifying everyone. And then Garnet refuses to defend them, and then Amethyst and Pearl fuse into Opal to defend them, and then those two gems, I love this moment, those two gems jump out fuse and say, I knew I couldn't be the only one. And that is such a great moment. It's really obviously about being in a repressive environment where you're not allowed to be who you are, and then you see someone who is being who they are. The obvious parallel here is for a child who is in some way queer growing up in a repressive, controlling, regimented environment where they're sheltered from the knowledge that other queer people exist, and they feel alone even when everyone's together. But then they see someone who is queer. They see that other way of living and realize they're not alone. They're not the only one. And they break free. And that's setting up a huge theme for these final episodes. First, it's bringing Steven Universe's queer themes, which are never far from the forefront. It's bringing them right front and center. It's saying, this is what we're going to be about for the next few episodes. And it's also saying, but the specific way in which we're going to be about these themes is about this idea of freedom from repressive social norms. Being able to say, this is wrong. This is not who I am, and this is not how I can live. And I need something else. And so this has to change. Which leads us right into escapism. And I think escapism... So, escapism and Together Alone both have extended dialogue-free sequences. In Together Alone, it's Steven's nightmare at the beginning, where he's struggling with questions of his identity. He has what are probably fragments of Pink's memories, since we see Pink Pearl, which is obviously the one that becomes White Pearl. And I haven't talked about White's creepy-ass Pearl, but at this point we've only seen a very little of her, and we don't really know what's going on with her. But suffice to say, White has a creepy-ass Pearl that is part of what makes her creepy, besides her just general attitude of weird detachment, flatness, is she's... I'm sorry, my brain just did a huge fart. Part of what makes her creepy is that she's the first Pearl we've ever seen who's not voiced by Dee Hall. Is that her name? Dee Hall? I think that's her name. Pearl's voice actress. She's voiced by someone whose name I'm blanking on, but it's the voice for White Diamond. And it's literally White Diamond's voice. They have the exact same voice. And now we see someone who looked just like her, except instead of being monochrome, she's very clearly a Pink Pearl. Hinting very strongly that White did something to sap the color out of her. And whatever it is, alter her personality dramatically, because the one we see in Legs from Here to Homeworld would not laugh with Steven/Pink Diamond. But the really big dialogue-free segment is the one that takes up most of escapism, which is the final episode of this block, and the second to last one I'll talk about. Most of what's going on in escapism is a return to Watermelon Island, and Steven discovering that they've broken into two factions. One appears to be continuing the worship of the Watermelon Stephen that sacrificed himself to save the others, that they seem to have based their society around last time we saw them. The other is this much more militaristic society that seems to have based themselves around the time Stephen possessed one of them and roused them to help against Malachite. So you've got the more militaristic ones and the more religious ones, and they're clearly engaged in a conflict. We see them fighting each other, sort of. We see them threatening each other. We never see it become actual violence, but there's clearly a disagreement here, a divide, two separate villages, and genuine tensions. And in the midst of this, Stephen's just trying to build a raft so that he can go to Beach City, so that he can try to talk to his dad in Bismuth. And eventually, they all put aside their, they use their leaf cloaks and spears and so forth to help Stephen build his raft. And the two symbols of the two sides, the fetishes their leaders carry in the anthropological sense of the word. The leaf cloak that the sort of high priestish one has, and the giant spear that other one has, are combined to make a mast and a sail. And Stephen escapes. And then he gets attacked by a watermelon shark, but puts up just enough of a fight to get into a position where he can comfort and kiss it, and then it leaves him be and goes on its way. And there is a lot happening in this sequence, and the song that follows while Stephen is found by Lion and trying to explain things to his dad in Bismuth, I think kind of speaks to what this whole sequence was trying to do. Because the song is about how it's dangerous to show doubt in this awful place, but I feel like I'm being pulled apart, and all I want to do is escape. And I think that's telling. Because I know of one awful place where it's dangerous to show doubt, where any attempt at a nuanced approach between two drawn-up factions will get you torn to pieces. The internet. Any kind of discussion board, Twitter, Reddit, Tumblr, what have you. Everything turns into, it's either A or B, and if you try to find a third or middle path, you'll get shredded. Because all the A's will think you're a B, and all the B's will think you're an A. Exactly what was going on with Stephen in the watermelon sequence. And Stephen just wants to escape so that he can get his message out. And he wants, and he has a different approach, which is neither total self-sacrificial, pacifistic, I give myself that others may live, nor this, martial, constantly guarded culture of violence. It's fighting just long enough to be able to talk it out. And that's the escape that's being sought. And that brings us to Familiar. Because kind of the whole thrust of Familiar and what the titular song is doing, which, by the way, what a fantastic song. And Zach Calloway? I'm blanking on his name. But the voice actor for Steven Universe has grown up so much in the course of filming this show, and his voice is so much more adult in this one song than it has ever been before, and I really, really like that, because this is Steven finally, very rapidly growing up. And what's happening in this episode is him realizing that he's been in this situation before. This situation of three older beings who think of him as a little sibling / child, and keep expecting him to be someone they remember who is no longer there, and everything he does is wrong, and if he can just cheer them up, maybe everything can get held together. And yeah, he's realizing that Pink was first season Steven. That Pink was caught in exactly Steven's situation at the beginning of the series. And that therefore he knows how to deal with this. And what that's doing is announcing that, you know, in combination with Together Alone saying, yeah, it's the queer themes that we're going with as our central thing in the next phase of the show, in the next few episodes, Familiar is saying, and we're talking about this as family dynamics. We are not going to be looking at this as rebels against the evil empire. We're not going to be looking at this as revolution. We're going to be looking at this as healing a broken family. Now, what that family has been broken by is a rigid culture and authoritarianism. So those themes are still present, but the manner in which it has announced they are going to be addressed is not as a war or a revolution. And escapism both tells us why and how. It tells us the why, that there's a feeling of being caught between either appeasement or violence with no middle ground, and we really don't want either, just to escape, you know, and that this is escapist. What is about to come in Change Your Mind is escapist. It's a fantasy of how things could be if they were different. It's not at all depicting anything like, quote-unquote, the real world, even largely in metaphorical senses. It's a wouldn't it be nice if. And that's kind of where it leaves us. This block of episodes, headed into Change Your Mind, is we're going to be talking about queer stuff, and this is going to be an escapist fantasy. This is going to be how we wish it could be and know that it isn't. So please, just let us get this out there without having to reduce it to that binary struggle of pacifism versus, you know, revolution. That's what it's asking for. The question is whether that is something that can be given, and whether it can, what it can do if it is or isn't given that. Which are all questions that kind of come into Change Your Mind, which, as I said, I'm not talking about in this video, which is now already approaching half an hour long. So I think that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, check out my Patreon for early access to vlogs, Let's Plays, essays, and more. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!